The pounding on my door at midnight wasn't just loud, it was desperate, like someone running from death itself. I jolted awake, heart hammering against my ribs. At first, I thought it was a dream. The night outside was too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears until you start hearing things. But then, 3 more thuds, each one harder than the last, rattling the frame of my front door. I stumbled down the hallway, bare feet sticking slightly to the cold wooden floor. My throat was dry, and with each step, my mind spun with possibilities. Fire, break-in, accident. When I flung the door open, Mrs. Keller stood there. She wasn't just my neighbor. She'd lived 2 houses down since I was a kid, the type who always trimmed her roses too neatly and waved with a tight smile. But now, she looked nothing like the composed woman I knew. Her hair was tangled, strands plastered to her damp forehead. Sweat or rain, I couldn't tell. Her chest rose and fell in frantic bursts, her nightgown clinging like she had run all the way here. And her eyes, wide, glassy, frantic. "Your family," she gasped, voice cracking. "Your family has been hiding something from you." My blood ran cold. I blinked at her. "What are you talking about?" Her hand shot out, gripping the doorframes so tight her knuckles blanched. She leaned in, breath sour with alcohol, though underneath it I caught the sharp metallic tang of fear. "They're lying to you. All of them," she whispered. "Every single one." For a second, I almost laughed. It sounded insane. Mrs. Keller, of all people. The woman who once argued with my mom about recycling bins. But her eyes, they weren't drunk eyes. They were terrified. I swallowed hard. "It's midnight. You should go home. Whatever this is." She cut me off. "No! You don't understand. You think your life is normal. But it isn't. You're living inside a story they've written for you." Her voice dropped lower, trembling like every word was dangerous. "What are you saying?" I asked, pulse quickening. Mrs. Keller glanced over her shoulder toward the dark street. No cars, no footsteps. Just silence thick enough to choke on. She stepped closer, her body shaking as though she was freezing despite the warm night air. "They'll never tell you," she said. "Not willingly. But if you start digging, you'll find it. The photographs, the names, the things they buried." My mouth went dry. "What things? Who buried what?" She shook her head violently, strands of hair whipping across her face. "I can't say it here. Not here. They'll hear. They always do." The porch light buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow. Moths spattered against the bulb, their wings making faint papery flutters. The smell of damp soil rose from the lawn after the earlier rain. My skin prickled with cold, though the night was warm. Inside, I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking in the hallway behind me. Each second sounded like a warning. I crossed my arms, trying to steady my voice. "Mrs. Keller, listen to yourself. You sound crazy," she snapped, eyes flashing. Then softer, almost pleading. "That's what they want you to think. That's how they win. By making you doubt yourself." Her sudden intensity jolted me. She wasn't slurring, she wasn't stumbling. If anything, she seemed sharper now, like every nerve in her body was on fire. I took a step back into the doorway. "You're scaring me." "Good." Her lips curled into something between a grimace and a smile. "You should be scared. Because when the truth comes out, it won't just break you. It'll destroy everything you think you know." My stomach twisted. She had to be exaggerating. Right. My family wasn't perfect, but they weren't hiding, whatever this was. A crime? A scandal? Something darker? I thought of my dad asleep upstairs, the steady sound of his snoring that usually comforted me. My mom's laughter at dinner just a few hours ago. My sister humming along to some song in her room. Ordinary things. Normal things. So why did Mrs. Keller's words feel like shards of glass in my throat? She grabbed my wrist suddenly, her fingers ice cold, nails digging into my skin. Her eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, burning with something I couldn't name. "Don't ask them," she hissed. Her voice was low but sharp enough to cut. "They'll never tell you the truth." And then she let go, leaving me frozen in the doorway, the echo of her words hanging heavy in the midnight air. Breakfast should have felt normal, but every clink of the spoon was another crack in the glass of my reality. The steam from the coffee curled up into the air, bitter and heavy. Normally that smell grounded me. It meant home, routine, the start of another day. But now it clawed at my stomach like rot. My hand trembled when I reached for the cup, and I forced myself to keep the porcelain steady. If anyone noticed, they didn't say a word. My parents sat across from me, both avoiding my eyes. My mother stirred her tea endlessly, spoons scraping in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. My father's gaze was fixed on his newspaper, but he hadn't turned a page in 5 minutes. And then there was my sister, her laugh cutting through the silence like broken glass. Too loud, too sharp, and with no joke to explain it. "You okay?" I asked her casually, as if her manic giggle hadn't sent a chill through me. "Fine," she snapped too quickly, her lips twitching into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Why wouldn't I be?" I leaned back in my chair, masking my unease. Mrs. Keller's warning from the night before still rang in my skull. "Your house isn't safe." The words had dug into me like splinters, impossible to ignore. So I tested the waters. "Strange thing happened yesterday," I said, picking at my toast. "Someone came to the door, asking questions." My father's spoon froze midair, just for a second. Then it clinked against the bowl again, steady as before. My mother coughed lightly into her napkin. My sister's laugh sputtered out. "Oh?" My father muttered, voice low. "Probably just a solicitor. Ignore them." The lie was so smooth it might have worked on anyone else, but not on me. Not after what I saw in his eyes, that flicker of panic he couldn't smother quickly enough. I pressed. She knew my name. Knew things she shouldn't. This time, silence. The weight of it pressed against my chest. My mother reached for the butter, her hand shaking so badly the knife scraped against the dish. She forced a smile. "People gossip. Small town." Their rehearsed answers only deepened the pit in my stomach. I felt like I was being smothered by the sound of cutlery, the too bright morning light, the tension no one would name. I excused myself after a few bites I couldn't swallow. The air outside the dining room felt cooler, cleaner, like I'd escaped a suffocating grip. But even as I walked down the hall, something kept gnawing at me. The feeling that I wasn't just imagining it, that something rotten was festering beneath the polished surface of my family's life. That's when I noticed a mirror. The hallway mirror had always been there, a simple rectangle with a thin wooden frame. But today, sunlight caught on the edge of the glass in a strange way, highlighting the seam between mirror and frame. And there, just barely visible, something yellowish peeked out from the back. My pulse hammered. I stepped closer, pretending to adjust my hair in case anyone passed by. My reflection stared back at me, pale and uneasy, as I slid my fingers along the frame. Paper crinkled beneath my touch. I froze. Part of me wanted to leave it, pretend I hadn't noticed. But the other part, the part that had been restless since Mrs. Keller's warning, couldn't. My heart pounded in my ears as I pried the corner loose and tugged the thing free. It was an envelope, yellowed with age. My name was written on the front in shaky, almost frantic handwriting. The letters slanted as if the writer's hand had been trembling. I held it between my fingers, the weight of it far heavier than paper had any right to be. Every instinct screamed not to open it here, in the open. My family could step out at any second. My father's footsteps, my sister's laughter, they felt like ghosts lingering right behind me. I slipped the envelope under my sleeve and hurried upstairs, locking my bedroom door behind me. My hands shook as I sat on the bed, staring at the thing. Who had hidden this, and why behind the mirror? I slid a finger under the brittle flap and pulled it open. Inside wasn't a letter, at least not yet. It was a photograph. My breath hitched. A faded image, colors washed out by time. My father, younger, maybe in his 20s, standing shoulder to shoulder with a man I didn't recognize. Both of them staring at the camera, unsmiling. My father's shirt, stained dark across the chest. Blood. I dropped the photo, my stomach twisting. My father's face stared up at me from the floor, caught in time with that stranger, and the evidence of something I couldn't yet understand. And in that moment, one thought screamed louder than the rest. What else were they hiding from me? Inside the envelope was a faded photograph. My father, younger, standing with a man I didn't recognize, and blood on his shirt. The photograph didn't just show a lie, it screamed it. I sat there on my bed, staring at it until my vision blurred. My father's younger face, hard, unsmiling, stared back at me like a stranger wearing his skin. But it was the man beside him who twisted my stomach into knots. His features tickled the edges of memory, familiar but maddeningly out of reach. And the blood on my father's shirt. No matter how long I stared, I couldn't make it into anything else. I shoved the photo back into the envelope, my chest heaving. The walls of my room felt too close, the air stale. I needed answers, and there was only one person I could ask without it turning into war, my mother. I found her in the kitchen, hands trembling as she rinsed dishes that were already clean. The faucet hissed, steam curling into the air, but she wouldn't look at me. "Mom," I said, holding the photo out like a weapon. "What is this?" Her head snapped toward me, and for a moment her eyes widened in naked fear. She went pale, so pale I thought she might faint. Her lips parted, trembling, but no words came out. Just silence. "Who is he?" I pressed, thrusting the picture closer. "Why is Dad standing there? Why is there blood? What the hell is this?" Her hands gripped the edge of the sink so tightly her knuckles whitened. For a second I thought she'd collapse into confession. Instead, her jaw clenched, and the softness in her expression shattered. "You're digging where you shouldn't," she hissed, snatching the photo from my hand. Her movements were sharp, desperate, like a cornered animal. My throat tightened. "So it's true. Whatever this is, it's real. You don't know what you're talking about." Her voice shook, but her glare tried to pin me in place. "Stop asking questions." The envelope crinkled in her fist as she shoved it into a drawer, slamming it shut. The kitchen suddenly smelled of burnt toast, though the toaster sat empty. It was like my senses were turning against me, amplifying the wrongness in the air. My pulse pounded in my ears, and I couldn't stand the sight of her stiff back turned toward me. I stormed out, my footsteps echoing too loudly in the hallway. My vision swam, a mix of rage and dread. That photo had blown a hole in everything I thought I knew about my family. "Wait." The word was barely a whisper, but it stopped me cold. I turned. My sister stood at the bottom of the stairs, clutching the banister with white-knuckled fingers. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and wet, as if she'd been holding back tears for hours. "You're not supposed to know," she whispered. Her voice cracked, almost breaking. "About Uncle Robert." The name hit me like ice water. "Uncle Robert?" I repeated, the word foreign in my mouth. We didn't have an Uncle Robert. At least, not one anyone had ever mentioned. She looked down, chewing her lip until it bled. "I shouldn't have said that." "No." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Tell me, who is he?" She shook her head, hair falling into her face. "You'll get us in trouble." "Trouble with who?" My chest burned. "With Dad? With Mom? What aren't they telling me?" Her eyes darted toward the kitchen, where the faint clatter of dishes continued, as if our mother were scrubbing away her guilt. Then she leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "He's the reason people die around here." The words dropped between us like a stone, heavy and suffocating. I froze, staring at her as my mind scrambled to catch up. "What do you mean die? What are you talking about?" She pressed her lips shut, shaking her head again and again. Her whole body quivered, like a child who'd already said too much. I reached for her arm, but she pulled away, retreating a step up the stairs. Her face crumpled, tears spilling over. "I can't," she whispered. "I shouldn't have said anything." And then she fled, her footsteps thudding up the stairs, the sound echoing long after she disappeared. I stood alone in the hallway, my hands shaking, my chest heaving, the smell of burnt toast still lingering in the air like smoke after a fire. Uncle Robert. A name I had never heard, but one my family had apparently been hiding my entire life. A name tied to blood, to death, to whatever had stained my father's shirt in that photograph. And if my sister was right, Robert wasn't just a shadow in the past. He was a threat still woven into the present. When I asked who Uncle Robert was, she whispered, "He's the reason people die around here." The basement wasn't just locked, it was forbidden. That word rattled in my chest as I watched my father's hand linger on the keyring. The metallic jingle was sharp, deliberate, like he wanted me to hear it. His jaw clenched when he turned the lock, but his lips curled into a thin smile when he caught me staring. "You don't need to worry about what's down there," he said, voice smooth, almost rehearsed. His eyes, though, betrayed something else, darting too quickly, pupils shrinking like he'd just been caught. I nodded, but inside my mind screamed. Why lock it in front of me? Why now? Later that night, silence draped the house like a suffocating blanket. My family's breathing filled the upper floor in uneven waves. I lay in bed, wide awake, replaying the sound of the key scraping against metal. That click was still in my ears. Finally, I couldn't take it. My feet touched the cold wooden floor, and every creak under my weight felt like a warning. I crept downstairs, heart hammering so hard I swore it might wake the whole house. The door loomed at the end of the hallway. Thick, chipped wood, edges stained darker from years of sweaty palms. The brass lock gleamed faintly under the moonlight spilling through the window. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Just the hollow echo of my own breath. The keys were impossible to steal. Father kept them in his pocket, even when he slept. But I had something else, a thin wire I'd once bent clumsily while trying to fix a drawer. My hands trembled as I pushed it inside the keyhole. Every movement scraped loud in my ears, magnified in the stillness. "Come on, come on," I whispered to myself. A sharp click. The sound was so loud I froze, waiting for footsteps upstairs. Nothing. Just silence. Slowly, I turned the handle. The door groaned as if it resented being opened, its hinges shrieking into the darkness below. The air that rushed out was damp, earthy, like wet stone mixed with rot. It clung to my skin, heavy, almost oily. My stomach lurched. I switched on my phone flashlight. The beam cut through layers of dust swirling like tiny ghosts. Boxes stacked high against the walls, some torn open. Stuffing spilling like entrails. Old trunks, their locks rusted shut. A table with tools scattered carelessly across it. Pliers, duct tape, a hammer still stained with something brown. My throat tightened. And then, in the center of the room, my light landed on it. A chair. Not just any chair. Metal, bolted to the floor. Rust had eaten away at its legs, but the leather straps fixed to the arms were unmistakable. Restraints. My stomach dropped. Behind me, the floor creaked. I spun around, light shaking wildly. Just the basement door swaying slightly, as if nudged by a draft. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to whisper, "What the hell is this place?" The words felt like they didn't belong to me, like someone else's voice echoing in that tomb. Footsteps above. Slow. Heavy. Pacing. My father. I killed the flashlight instantly, standing frozen in the suffocating dark. Every muscle screamed, but I didn't move. The footsteps stopped. Thought I heard something. His voice drifted faintly through the boards. Calm. Too calm. Like he was talking to someone else, or to himself. I pressed my back against the cold concrete, clutching my phone like a weapon. My breathing was shallow, controlled, rehearsed like I could trick the silence into forgetting me. After a long pause, the footsteps moved away. A door closed upstairs. My hand shook as I flicked the flashlight back on. The beam quivered over the room, jumping from box to box, tool to tool, until it slid across the far wall. And then I stopped breathing. There, carved deep into the concrete, jagged and raw, was my name. Hearing someone breathe in the dark basement nearly stopped my heart. It was faint at first, almost like the damp walls exhaling. But no, this wasn't the house. This was human. Wet, uneven, ragged, the kind of breathing that belonged to someone just a few feet away from me. I froze. My phone's beam wavered across the jagged letters of my name, then stuttered once, twice, and died. The screen went black in my hand, and with it, the basement swallowed me whole. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. The dark pressed against my chest like a fist. The smell of rust, mildew, and something faintly metallic, blood, flooded my nose. "Who's there?" My voice cracked, barely a whisper. The breathing hitched, like whoever was there had been waiting for me to speak. Then silence. That was worse. My legs carried me before my brain caught up. I bolted. The stairs groaned beneath me, every step a gunshot in the suffocating quiet. My lungs burned, throat raw, but I didn't stop until I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me. I staggered into the hallway, chest heaving, palms slick with sweat. For a second, I thought I was safe. Then I saw them. My parents, sitting in the living room like they'd been waiting all along. The lamps were off, only the dull glow from the streetlight outside cutting sharp angles across their faces. My father leaned back in his chair, legs crossed too neatly, his hands folded like a man in control. My mother sat on the edge of the couch, her fingers twisting the hem of her sleeve until the fabric puckered. "Out for a walk, were you?" My father's voice was calm, almost amused, but his eyes were knives. I couldn't answer. My chest still rose and fell too fast, betraying me. "What did you see?" The way he said it, flat, direct, made it clear he already knew the answer. He wasn't asking. He was cornering me. I don't know what you mean," I stammered, my throat raw. The corner of his mouth twitched. A smile? No, too thin, too sharp. More like a warning. You think I'm a fool? His voice sharpened, cutting through the room like glass snapping. You went down there. Don't lie. My mother flinched. Her hands trembled harder now, twisting tighter. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Mom? My voice cracked, desperate. Please, just tell me what's going on. What is that basement? Her lips parted, a whisper forming, but my father's head turned sharply toward her. His eyes pinned her in place. She swallowed, lowered her gaze, and said nothing. The silence stretched, suffocating. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break my ribs. You carved my name into the wall. I blurted, anger punching through the fear. Why? What the hell does that mean? For the first time, my father leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His smile widened just enough to make my stomach twist. Your name is there, he said slowly. Because you've always been meant to see it. Just not yet. My skin crawled. His voice was too steady, too rehearsed, but his fingers drummed against his leg, betraying the tension he tried to hide. What does that mean? I snapped. My voice was shaking, but louder now, angrier. Why are you doing this? What's down there? He studied me like I was a bug pinned under glass. His eyes flicked over my face, searching for cracks. Then he chuckled. Low. Cold. You're not ready for answers. But you will be soon. Dad. His hand shot up, silencing me. His calm cracked for the first time. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrest. You think you're brave? You think you can pry into things that don't belong to you? He leaned closer, his breath hot, his words soft but venomous. You're a child playing with fire. I clenched my fists, anger burning now where fear had been. My voice was low, but steady. I'm not a child anymore. Something flickered in his expression then, just for a second. A shadow of doubt. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as if measuring me differently now. And then he smiled again, softer this time, almost tender. You'll understand soon enough, he murmured. Before I could answer, he leaned forward, his eyes boring into mine, and whispered, Robert is coming back. I thought Robert was a ghost from my family's past, but then he walked through the door. For years, his name had been nothing more than a shadow in whispered arguments, the edge of a threat my father never explained. A warning, not a man. But that night, thunder rolling like war drums outside, I learned the truth. Robert wasn't gone. He had never been gone. It started with my father's confession. He sat stiff in his chair, his face calm, but his fingers dug into the wooden arms so hard the wood cracked beneath his grip. My mother sat beside him, silent, her eyes fixed on the carpet as if it could swallow her. Robert was never dead, my father said flatly. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? You told me. I told you what you needed to hear. His tone didn't rise, but his jaw clenched, a vein pulsing at his temple. He was away. That's all you need to know. Away? My laugh was bitter, shaking. You buried an empty coffin and told me it was his. You lied to me my entire life. My father's gaze locked on mine, steady but cold, like glass over fire. Some lies are necessary. I looked at my mother. Her lips trembled, her hands twisting together so tightly the knuckles went white. She didn't speak, didn't move. What did he do? My voice cracked. Why hide him? My father leaned forward, the chair groaning under his weight. Because Robert is not a man you want to know. A crash of thunder shook the windows. The rain lashed harder, smearing the world outside into streaks of silver. Then came the sound, low and sharp, the crunch of tires on gravel. My father's head turned toward the window. My mother inhaled sharply, her chest rising like she'd been struck. Headlights swept across the living room, blinding for an instant. A car door slammed. Footsteps crunched against wet earth, slow, deliberate. My heart hammered so loud I thought he'd hear it from outside. Then the front door opened. The air shifted, heavy, suffocating. He stepped in like he owned the place, like he'd never been gone. Robert, taller than my father, shoulders broad enough to block the light behind him. His presence filled the room like smoke, creeping into every corner, every breath. A scar cut across his cheek, thick and jagged, like someone had tried to carve him out of existence and failed. His eyes found mine instantly. Not my father's, not my mother's. Me. And he smiled. Slow. Familiar. Like we'd met before. You've grown. he said, his voice rough, rasping, but steady. He took a step closer. Do you remember what you did to me? Robert acted like I had wronged him, but the evidence said otherwise. His words hung in my chest like poison. Do you remember what you did to me? I didn't. I couldn't. But the way his eyes drilled into mine, the curl of his lip, the deliberate pause, he wanted me to believe I had. My parents' silence only confirmed it. Mom's hands clutched her robe tight, knuckles white. Dad didn't move at all, except for that nervous tick of his thumb tapping against the armrest. Not once did either of them tell Robert to leave. Not once did they say, "She was just a child." That silence cut deeper than Robert's words. Hours later, when the house had finally settled, when my parents' hushed arguing had faded behind their locked bedroom door, and even Robert's heavy footsteps upstairs stilled, I crept into the basement. The air was damp, sharp with mold and something metallic, like old coins or dried blood. The single bulb buzzed overhead, swaying slightly as if disturbed by something unseen. I found them stacked in the farthest corner, Robert's trunks. Heavy leather, buckles tarnished green, their surfaces scarred like they had been dragged through hell. My hand shook as I unlatched the first. The hinges screamed. Inside, newspaper clippings, hundreds, yellowed, brittle, ink faded but legible. I shuffled through them with trembling fingers. Missing persons. Faces stared back at me, men, women, children. Smiling, unaware their lives would end in print. But what froze me wasn't the articles. It was the handwriting in the margins. Names, dates, locations. Sometimes a single word. Gone. Other times, an X slashed over the photo. And there, my stomach lurched, was my name. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth before a scream could escape. My name, written in Robert's jagged scrawl, circled 3 times like an obsession. Why would I be on his list? Why was I marked like the others, the missing, the forgotten? The basement suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in. I pressed against the cold cement, heart racing. Had he planned to erase me too? My father's steady voice upstairs echoed in memory. He's been away. Away where? Locked up? Hiding? Hunting? The thought clawed at me. My family knew. They knew something all along. And they let him back into our house. I shoved deeper into the trunk, searching for answers. More clippings, more names. Then, one with no face. Just a blank square where a photo should have been. Across it, in smeared black ink, "She remembers." A chill tore through me. My fingertips went numb. I dug faster, papers ripping in my haste, until I found it, the last clipping in the pile. Different from the rest. Edges frayed, paper thinner, almost delicate. And scrawled across it in thick, blood-red ink were 5 words. My throat dried. My mind screamed at me to stop reading, to burn the clippings, to run. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Robert's words slammed back into me. "Do you remember what you did to me?" No, I didn't. But now, I wasn't sure I wanted to. Because if he thought I had wronged him, and the evidence showed he had targeted me, then something far darker connected us. And my parents, they weren't just hiding the truth. They were protecting him. Or worse, protecting me from myself. The bulb above flickered, casting the room into brief darkness before buzzing back to life. My pulse hammered against my ribs, loud enough I feared it might give me away. I stuffed the clipping back, slammed the trunk shut, and pressed my ear to the ceiling. Silence. No footsteps. No voices. Just the pounding rain outside and the hum of the light. But as I turned to leave, something shifted in the shadows near the furnace. I froze. Had it been my imagination? Or was someone down there with me? Because just as I reached the stairs, I realized my mistake. The clipping wasn't in my hand anymore. It was gone. And if I hadn't dropped it, then someone had taken it. The memory didn't just return, it shattered me. The words from the clipping replayed over and over in my head. She must never remember. I didn't want to. I wanted to lock it away like a nightmare. Toss the pieces into a box and forget the basement, the trunks, the clippings, and most of all, Robert. But my mind refused. That night, the line between dream and memory blurred. I saw her, a little girl. Her small hands were coated in blood, red and sticky, shining under the dim light of the basement. And there was Robert, taller than any man should be, looming over her, eyes dark as oil. The metallic stench of iron choked my senses. A fire crackled somewhere behind my eyelids, shadows dancing across the walls. I wanted to scream, but my throat was a dry cave. My fingernails dug into my palms so deep I tasted copper, tasted panic. Every heartbeat rang like a bell, sharp and merciless. When I woke, sheets drenched in sweat, I couldn't tell if I had dreamed it, or remembered it. My head throbbed, every pulse pounding in time with a scream that seemed lodged in my skull. "Are you okay?" My sister's voice was cautious, almost scared. I hadn't even noticed she was standing at the doorway. I shook my head. Words failed me. I could only swallow against the lump in my throat. You've been having those nightmares again," she said softly. "Mom said it's because you were sick as a child. Fever dreams." But I knew better. Fever didn't smell like iron. Fever didn't leave imprints of fear so deep they clung to your soul. I tried to tell myself it was impossible. That a child in the basement, blood on her hands, couldn't be me. But every detail, the smell, the chill in the air, the way shadows seemed to cling to Robert's boots, matched too perfectly with the clippings, with the name scrawled in red ink. She must never remember. A shiver crawled down my spine. What had I done? What had I witnessed, or caused, that they wanted me to forget? I stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. The mirror reflected a girl who looked older than she should, eyes hollowed by fear, skin pale, lips trembling. And in that reflection, I glimpsed a fragment of her, the little girl from the memory. Her face burned into my mind. My mind screamed against the recollection, but it came anyway. The screams, the fire, the darkness, the metallic tang of iron. I couldn't stop seeing it. That night, the house was deathly silent. Rain streaked the windows, thunder rolling like distant drums. I lay in bed, fingers laced tightly together, praying I would sleep and escape the vision. But sleep was no mercy. Every time my eyelids fluttered, the basement rose again, the little girl, the blood, Robert's eyes burning into mine. And then a voice, low, whispered, familiar. "You remember now," it said. I bolted upright, chest heaving, heart hammering like a sledge against ribs. The room was empty. My parents' door down the hall was closed, their shadows hidden behind it. The storm outside screamed in my ears, but the voice, soft, deliberate, terrifying, lingered. Remember what? My thoughts raced. What had I done? What had they tried to erase from me? Morning came, pale and gray. Sunlight filtered weakly through curtains, but it brought no comfort. I couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. My stomach was a tight knot of fear and nausea, my head still pounding with fragments of fire and screams. And then he was there. Robert. His presence filled the hallway before he even stepped fully into view. The air around him seemed to bend, thick and suffocating. He leaned slightly toward me, voice a near whisper, cold and calculated. "They lied to you," he said. Every word deliberate, almost teasing. "You're the reason it all started." The words hit me harder than the memory itself. My knees went weak. My hands shook so violently I thought they would drop to the floor. I wanted to scream, to run, to bolt into daylight, but his shadow blocked the way. His eyes weren't the eyes of the uncle I had once trusted. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much, done too much, and was waiting for me to understand my part in it. My chest heaved, every breath a struggle. The walls seemed to close in, the storm outside echoing the chaos in my mind. The memory, the nightmares, Robert, my parents' silence, they all collided into one impossible truth. And I realized, the past wasn't behind me. It had been waiting, patient, for me to remember. Robert's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "Do you remember now?" he whispered. And in that single question, the weight of everything, the fire, the blood, the lies, settled over me like a stone. Every word they spoke twisted tighter into a web of lies. I couldn't breathe, not fully, not without feeling the walls of my own home press in on me. Robert's accusation, "You're the reason it all started," kept replaying, a sinister echo bouncing off every shadowed corner. My parents, who had always been my anchors, now seemed like strangers. Their voices were calm, measured, almost rehearsed, but their eyes darted, hands fidgeting, as though trying to hide secrets too heavy to speak. "They're lying," I thought, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter until my knuckles whitened. But why? And about what? It started subtly. The first night, I overheard my father muttering to someone on the phone, voices low, clipped. When I approached, he smiled, forced, brittle, and the conversation ended abruptly. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, eyes avoiding mine. Then, photographs began disappearing. I found one under a loose floorboard in my bedroom. A family picture, torn at the edges, faces scratched out, names erased in pencil. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper secrets. Floors that creaked too loudly when someone left a room, soft footsteps that paused whenever I appeared, doors clicking shut with no one behind them. And my sister, she became a ghost. Once, she used to cling to me during storms, hiding under the same blanket, whispering about the thunder. Now, she didn't answer when I called her name. She passed me in hallways without a glance, every step deliberate, measured, avoiding eye contact like I was the plague. "Why are you avoiding me?" I demanded one evening, my voice raw, cracking in places I didn't know existed. She paused mid-step, lips pressed tight. Her eyes, once warm and trusting, were cold, calculating. "I'm not avoiding you," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. I just can't. Can't what? You're hiding something. I can feel it." Her hands trembled, fingers twisting together like tangled rope. She said nothing more and left. That silence burned hotter than any scream. I started noticing patterns, the way they moved around the house, conversations that abruptly stopped when I entered rooms, the way my father's coat pockets jingled, not with coins, but with keys and small objects I wasn't allowed to touch, shadows behind the curtains, too still to be anyone, yet always present, whispers through the walls at night. My imagination? Maybe. But every instinct in my body screamed otherwise. I couldn't trust my memory anymore. Couldn't trust the stories they told me since I was a child. Even the house, the one place I thought was mine, felt like a trap. Every creak, every drafty corner, every smell of mildew seemed designed to remind me that I was being watched, guided, manipulated. How much of my life is real? I wondered. And how much of it was carefully hidden, kept from me until I was old enough to remember? Anger bubbled up to replace the confusion, sharp and relentless. Rage that clawed at my chest, made my hands shake, made my teeth grind. I needed answers. No more shadows, no more whispers, no more silences. I would unearth the truth, even if it shattered everything I thought I knew. Even if it destroyed me. Night after night, I crept through the house. I searched drawers, closets, old trunks, every dark corner where my parents' eyes never lingered. The air smelled stale, heavy with dust and old wood. My fingertips brushed over splintered surfaces, envelopes yellowed with age, diaries that had been carefully hidden from me. And then, in the attic, under a thick layer of dust that coated everything like a shroud, I found it. A small wooden box, locked tight, and carved deep into its surface were my initials. I dropped to my knees, heart hammering so violently it felt like it might shatter my ribs. The box was old, the wood rough beneath my fingers, but the lock gleamed, untouched by time, a silent sentinel guarding secrets meant only for me. My reflection shimmered in the dusty window behind it, pale, wild-eyed, desperate. This is it, I thought. The answer. The truth. Whatever is in here will tell me everything. But a cold shiver ran down my spine. Every instinct screamed that opening it would change everything. And maybe it wasn't a choice anymore. The web of lies was about to snap tight, and I was caught squarely in its center. I knelt before the box, trembling, fingertips grazing the lock. My breath caught, heart pounding in the silence of the attic. This is what they were hiding from me. This is the truth. And then I realized, I had no idea if I was ready to face it. To catch Robert, I had to become the bait. I didn't flinch, even though every instinct screamed at me to run. Robert sat across from me in the dimly lit living room, the shadows of the street lamps slicing across his scarred face. His eyes, dark and calculating, flicked to mine, searching, weighing, threatening. This is it, I thought, gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles hurt. Everything comes out tonight. You've grown, he said, voice low, almost casual, but the twitch in his jaw betrayed him. But do you remember what you did? I let a pause stretch, letting the silence press against him. My heart hammered, not with fear, but with controlled anticipation. I think it's you who should explain, Robert, I said softly, letting my words drip with mock innocence. You know everything. His lips curled into a sneer, nostrils flaring. Don't test me. You've always been too clever for your own good. Perfect, I thought. Anger is the bait. I leaned forward slightly, letting my eyes lock with his. I wanted him to see challenge, to feel that I wasn't afraid. And it worked. The muscles in his neck tightened. His hands, resting on his knees, trembled just enough for me to notice. "You've been hiding a lot," I pressed, voice calm, steady. "About us. About what really happened." His head snapped up, eyes wide. Veins throbbed at his temples. You don't know anything. You have no idea." "You're right," I said, tilting my head. "I don't know everything. That's why I'm asking." Robert's facade cracked. He leaned forward, fists clenching the table, nails biting into the wood. The smell of sweat and stale cigarettes filled the room, suffocating in its intensity. I could see it now, the temper I had only glimpsed in my nightmares, fully alive, wild. "You think you can trap me?" He spat, voice rising, echoing off the walls. "You think a little game with your toys." He gestured violently, nearly tipping a chair. "Can pin me down?" I kept my voice calm, soothing almost, letting him rage around me. Let him think he controls the storm, I told myself. We're recording it all. The lamp beside us had a tiny recording device hidden in its base, a soft red light blinking faintly. Every word he shouted, every confession he didn't even realize he was making, would be captured. And he had no idea. "You've covered everything up, haven't you?" I said softly. "All the years, what you did, and how they used me as a shield." Robert froze for a fraction of a second, long enough for my pulse to quicken, but then he exploded. Words spilled like fire. How my family had turned a blind eye, how they had protected him, how my own presence had been manipulated to hide the truth. His voice crescendoed, raw with rage, confessing secrets I had only dared to imagine. I stayed perfectly still, letting the words wash over me, my fingers flexing around the table edge, nails biting into my palms. This was it, the proof I had needed, the thread to unravel the web of lies. And then the door burst open. My father stormed in, face pale, eyes wide, staring at the faint blinking red light of the recording device. His lips parted, a soundless gasp escaping as he realized what was happening. Robert froze mid-rant, eyes darting from me to my father, confusion and fury colliding in an instant. Time seemed to stop. The smell of sweat and smoke clung to the air. The quiet hum of the lamp, the small red light flickering, became louder than any shout. Every heartbeat in the room pulsed in my ears. I could feel the power shift. The bait had worked. And now, finally, the storm I had been preparing for months was about to crash down on them all. Robert's eyes narrowed, chest heaving, as my father's shadow fell over him. I knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back. The truth was out, and the fallout was about to begin. The truth didn't set me free. It chained me tighter. I raised the recorder above my head, my knuckles white, every heartbeat pounding like a war drum. My father lunged, eyes wild, mouth open to snatch it from me, but I held firm. "No!" I screamed, voice cracking. "You're going to tell me everything, now!" Robert's laugh filled the room, a booming, hollow sound that made the walls vibrate. He leaned back casually, yet there was a tension in the curl of his shoulders, the twitch of his fingers. He thrived in chaos, but even he hadn't anticipated the way I had cornered him. "I've got him. And this time, he can't hide." My mother sank to the floor, hands trembling, mascara streaking down her cheeks like black rain. Her lips quivered as she whispered, I didn't want you to know." "Then tell me," I shouted. "Why? Why everything? Why the lies, the fear, the erased memories?" Her hands gripped her knees, rocking slightly. "Robert, he did things, terrible things. We thought we could protect you if we hid the truth. We never meant for." Her words broke. Her sobs filled the silence that had followed my yelling, suffocating me in their weight. I could smell the sharp tang of sweat mixed with fear, a metallic bite in the air that made my stomach churn. Robert's eyes gleamed, a predator watching a cornered animal. "Go on, mother," he said, voice silky, teasing. "Tell her. Make her feel it." I felt fury coil inside me. How could they protect me by letting him walk free? By letting him carve my name into walls, erase my childhood, make me question every moment of my life? My mother began again, trembling. "You were the witness. You saw him, that night in the basement. The fire, the screams, the blood. We thought if you forgot you'd survive. But you remembered in flashes, little pieces. That's why we covered up everything. That's why your memories, why Robert." I staggered back, choking on the realization. The little girl in the basement, the blood, it wasn't just a nightmare. Robert leaned forward suddenly, the scar on his cheek catching the dim light. Yes, he hissed, voice low and venomous. You survived. The perfect witness. The one who remembered just enough to haunt us all, but not enough to stop me. I felt bile rise, my stomach twisting. Stop talking. I rasped, but the words were empty. I had to hear it all. I needed to see the monster fully exposed. My mother shook her head violently, clutching at my father's arm. We did what we thought was right. You were too young, too innocent. Robert, he wasn't supposed to. Robert barked a laugh, eyes narrowing. Oh, they tried to erase every trace. But some things survive. He gestured to me, voice low, taunting. And now you've found the truth. Aren't you proud? I could feel my pulse in my temples. The air was thick, almost tangible, scented with sweat, smoke from the fireplace, and the bitterness of betrayal. Every inch of my body screamed. Rage, fear, a sick, twisted clarity that sharpened everything around me. I lunged, hands trembling but sure, holding the recorder out to my mother. Say it. Say everything. Every lie. Every secret. Every crime Robert committed. I need it on record. Her voice cracked, trembling as she spilled the details, every word punctuated by sobs. The hidden victims, the fires, the nights of terror, the family's complicity in silence. Every confession landed like a hammer blow. I wanted to scream, to cry, to vanish. But most of all, I wanted justice. My body trembled, fury coiling tighter than my fear. Robert, leaning back against the wall, exhaled sharply, smirk curling at the corner of his lips. Impressive, he said. But you still don't remember the worst part, do you? I froze, pulse halting for a fraction of a second. Every nerve in my body screamed. The worst part? I had survived everything, seen everything. But something in his tone, that venomous whisper, told me the nightmare wasn't over. My father's face was pale, knuckles white as he gripped the armrest of the chair. My mother's sobs were fading into a cold, stunned silence, eyes darting nervously toward Robert. And Robert, he leaned closer, closer than he had any right to, the air around him heavy, tainted with threat, his voice a whisper that crawled into my ears and under my skin. You will remember soon enough, he said, teeth bared slightly, venom thick in his words. And when you do, you'll understand why it all began. Why it was always about you. A chill ran down my spine. The room felt smaller, walls closing in. I wanted to bolt, but every instinct that had kept me alive screamed to stay, to face this fully. This is it, I thought. The moment the past and present collide. The moment everything they hid comes crashing down. And I finally see it all. The truth wasn't freedom. It was a chain, one that wrapped around my mind and refused to let go. And Robert's last words promised the heaviest link was still waiting. I backed toward the corner of the room, heart hammering, as Robert leaned in close, hissing. But you still don't remember the worst part, do you? Robert's downfall wasn't quiet. It was a violent storm that tore through everything we built. The house shook with shouts and crashing furniture, a symphony of chaos fueled by rage. Robert stood in the center of the living room, chest heaving, eyes wild with fury. You ruined me, he screamed, veins pulsing in his neck. All of you. This is your fault. You, your lies, your precious memories. I felt my pulse hammer against my ribs, every nerve screaming. Sweat slicked my palms as I gripped the recorder like a lifeline. His words, meant to intimidate, only fueled the cold fire rising in my chest. Every threat, every hissed insult, was a key turning in the lock of the truth I had waited years to uncover. This ends tonight. One way or another. My father, pale with a mix of fear and fury, charged forward. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, old smoke from the fireplace, and the metallic tang of fear. His hand struck Robert across the jaw, a precise, furious swing that sent him staggering backward. Enough! Backslash. My father roared, eyes blazing. Enough lies, enough games! Robert hit the floor hard, coughing, spitting, but he was far from defeated. His eyes glinted with manic energy as he scrambled to his feet. You think this changes anything? He sneered, lurching forward. I've done everything. You'll see. You'll all see. I pressed my palms against my ears for a moment, the echoes of his voice bouncing off the walls, rattling the pictures and furniture. The smell of sweat and fear was suffocating, sticky like thick fog. My mother clutched her chest, trembling, mascara smudged across her face, eyes wide with terror and guilt. Through the open window, I could hear the wail of sirens. Relief hit me briefly, sharp and sweet, but the storm inside the house refused to calm. The neighbors had called. The law was finally coming for him. Robert spun toward the door, fists clenched, pacing like a caged beast. "They think they can stop me?" he bellowed. "They think I'll stay quiet? I'll scream it all, every word, every crime, every secret they buried." And then he did. The words tumbled out, loud and raw, fires, threats, hidden victims. Every confession fell like a hammer on the fragile foundation my family had tried to maintain. My father's face twisted with horror, and my mother's sobs echoed louder as she realized everything was unraveling in real time. The front door burst open, officers flooding in, their boots thudding against the floorboards. Flashlights sliced through the dim light, bouncing off walls lined with memories tainted by deception. "Step away from him!" one shouted, voice firm, practiced. Robert, cornered, roared, swinging fists wildly. He struck at one officer, missed, and spun, snarling at me. Every word, every movement bared his madness. She's the reason! My life, ruined by her!" I could see the cracks in him now, the facade of control shattered. He was pure chaos, fear, guilt, and rage boiling over. I felt a twisted satisfaction, cold and undeniable. This was the proof, the reckoning, the moment his crimes would be exposed to the world. My father grabbed Robert again, brute strength fueled by desperation, slamming him against the wall. The impact rattled the paintings, dust floating in the tense air. Officers wrestled him to the ground, cuffs snapping over his wrists as he thrashed, teeth bared, eyes blazing with fury and humiliation. Robert's voice, hoarse and venomous, rang through the house. "You think this ends it?" he snarled, turning to me, lips curling in a twisted smile. "You'll remember, you'll all remember." The officers dragged him out into the night, his struggles futile against their numbers. He thumped against the police car doors, spit flying, shouting my name with every ounce of his rage. And yet, he smiled. His eyes locked with mine, and in that twisted, horrifying glance, I saw it all, the menace, the hatred, the threat that had haunted me for so long. Then his lips moved silently, and I read the words he mouthed. "Not over." I shivered, a cold chill crawling down my spine, the summer air outside suddenly feeling sharp, brittle, filled with the distant echo of sirens and the heavy scent of dust, blood, and betrayal. My family collapsed onto the floor, broken and trembling, but the weight of the moment pressed on me. The chaos subsided. Officers corralled Robert into the back of the car, the sound of the engine revving echoing down the empty street. The house, once filled with lies and fear, felt hollow and raw, every corner a reminder of the truths that had finally surfaced. I sank against the wall, breathing raggedly, hands shaking. The recorder still clutched in my palm, every confession safely captured. I could hear my mother sobbing quietly behind me, my father staring at the ground, jaw tight, reality settling in like a stone. And through it all, Robert's final, silent promise lingered. Not over. The words crawled under my skin, and I knew, with a sinking certainty, that the storm wasn't finished. The world outside might have called the authorities, but the web he had spun, the shadows he had left in my life, would take years, maybe decades, to untangle. But for the first time, I felt the power shift. He was no longer untouchable. He was exposed, vulnerable, and I had survived. As they shoved him into the police car, he smiled at me and mouthed, "Not over." Robert was gone, but the scars he left bled into everything. The house was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, almost choking. Every corner held a memory I wished I could forget, shadows of arguments, whispers of lies, the echo of his furious voice bouncing through the halls. I avoided the basement entirely. The carved letters on the walls stared at me from the darkness, jagged reminders of fear and manipulation. I couldn't bring myself to face them, and yet every creak of the floorboards, every draft brushing past my ankles, whispered that he had been here, had touched this place, had lived in the spaces I thought were safe. I sank onto the couch, fingers tracing the recorder's edge. Nights were spent listening to the confessions, piecing together the fragments of a life I had once assumed was ordinary. His voice, infuriatingly smooth in some moments, twisted into snarls in others. I caught every detail, every hesitation, every slip that revealed what he truly was, someone who thrived on control, on terror, on secrecy. I had proof now, but proof did not erase the lingering fear. I survived. But surviving doesn't mean forgetting. The air smelled faintly of old smoke and the lingering scent of sweat, the house still absorbing traces of the chaos that had erupted. My mother shuffled around the kitchen, silent except for the occasional sniffle. My father stayed in his study, staring at paperwork like it would make the world right again, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. My sister avoided my gaze entirely, retreating to her room, doors closing softly but with purpose. Trust had cracked, shattered like porcelain dropped onto stone. Even outside, the neighborhood felt different. Mrs. Langley, my neighbor, stopped by occasionally, ostensibly to check if I was all right. Her eyes were softer now, less wary, but I could still see the unspoken fear lurking there. The memory of her voice, calling the police that night, the echo of sirens slicing through the night, was impossible to ignore. Even those who tried to help carried fragments of that terror, and their unease reminded me how deep the wounds ran. Some nights, I played the recordings over and over. I wanted to understand every nuance of what happened, every subtle shift in tone, every lie and admission. With each play, I caught new details, patterns I hadn't noticed before, small tells, nervous tics, micro-expressions Robert had revealed in his voice alone. I realized that fear is never one-dimensional. It twists, bends, and hides in the spaces you least expect. "You were always watching," I whispered to myself one night, voice cracking, almost laughing. "Always plotting, always lying. And I never saw it until it was too late." The lamp beside me flickered, the faint hum filling the otherwise still room. The darkness seemed to gather around it, shadows stretching like long fingers, reminding me that the past was not so easily confined. Every creak of the house, every distant car alarm, made me flinch, even when I knew I was safe. Even as I felt stronger, sharper, more aware, a part of me remained fragile. I walked through the house like a careful ghost, stepping lightly, checking corners, listening for movement that wasn't there. Each hallway felt like a corridor of memory, each door a potential vault of secrets. I realized strength wasn't just surviving. It was navigating the remnants of what had been broken, carrying the knowledge that even with justice served, the psychological scars lingered. I tried to piece together the missing fragments of my past, photographs tucked under floorboards, whispers caught in recordings, subtle hints left unspoken, like fragments of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to finish. Some nights, I let myself wonder if I could ever feel completely safe again, or if my sense of normalcy had been irreparably fractured. Then, one morning, a chill ran down my spine. I opened the door to find an envelope slipped under it, crisp, white, deliberate. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The familiar, jagged handwriting made my stomach knot. Robert's handwriting. The house seemed to inhale around me, holding its breath. Even though he was behind bars, even though I had survived, his presence seeped into the paper like a shadow. I didn't dare open it yet. I could feel the weight of his words, the threat and promise they carried, just by looking at the envelope. I backed into the living room, pressing the envelope to my chest. My pulse raced. Not over. Those words, unspoken but implied, crawled along my nerves like frostbite. The scars he left were no longer just physical reminders. They were whispers in my mind, unrelenting and patient, waiting for the next moment to strike. I knew then that the battle wasn't finished. Survival had given me strength, yes, but it had also tethered me to a future I couldn't yet see, a narrative still unfolding in shadows. Every sound, every glance, every whisper carried him forward, reminding me that even captured, even defeated, Robert had left a part of himself behind, a reminder that some scars never fade. One morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door, with Robert's handwriting on it. His letter wasn't an ending. It was a new beginning for the nightmare. The envelope had been slipped under my door without a sound, but the moment I saw it, a chill clawed at my spine. I could feel it before I touched it, the weight of him, the presence of Robert lingering in the air like smoke after a fire. I hesitated, fingers brushing the paper, the jagged lines of his handwriting teasing a memory of rage and fear I thought I'd left behind. My pulse raced, heart hammering against my ribs, as I slowly pulled the letter free. The paper smelled faintly of the basement, damp and iron-tinged, as if he had been there, as if he had pressed it against those carved walls. That alone made me shiver. My hands trembled, not from cold, but from the knowledge that he had left a part of himself behind, even behind bars. I shouldn't open it, but I did. I had to. The jagged, uneven handwriting sprawled across the page. The ink was sharp, almost metallic, carrying a faint, acrid tang that made my stomach twist. I swallowed hard, reading each word as if it were a living thing, crawling along my nerves. "You may think you've won," it began, the letters jagged, unsteady but deliberate. "But the truth is still buried deeper than you know." I froze, gripping the edges of the paper so tightly my knuckles turned white. Memories surged, hidden corners of the basement, whispered arguments, the way my parents' eyes had shifted whenever Robert's name came up. He was everywhere in those memories, and now he was speaking from the page, threading a web of fear into my mind. He claimed there were others, people in the shadows, secrets that extended beyond my family. "You are not the only one who thinks they hold the truth," he wrote. The words pressed against my chest like ice, suffocating, reminding me that the world I had rebuilt, the fragile sense of safety I had clawed back, was nothing more than a thin veneer. I could feel my pulse in my throat as I continued, reading lines that made my skin crawl. "They've used you as a pawn, just as you were always meant to be. And now you're marked. No matter where you run, no matter how far you hide, the past follows." The air around me seemed to thicken, heavy with the smell of ink and the lingering sense of damp wood, like the basement itself had seeped into my living room. Every creak of the floorboard, every whisper of wine through the window made me flinch. Even though Robert was locked behind steel bars, he had found a way to reach me, to etch fear into the present. His tone shifted, almost intimate, curling into the spaces between my thoughts. He referenced moments only I would remember. The time he had cornered me in the hallway, the look in my father's eyes when he tried to protect me, the way my sister had averted her gaze. It wasn't just a threat, it was a reminder that he had known, always known, and had orchestrated every shiver, every doubt, every whispered lie. "When I return," the letter hissed, "you'll remember everything, and then you'll wish you hadn't." I read the line again, my stomach knotting, a cold dread settling in my chest. Return? How? He's in prison. But the clarity of his words left no room for rational thought. There was an inevitability in the way he wrote, a promise that survival, until now, was only temporary. That even if he was gone physically, his influence lingered, spreading into the cracks of my world. I pressed the letter to my face, inhaling the faint scent of basement mildew and ink. The smell was subtle, but unmistakable, and my stomach turned. His presence was in the paper itself, as if the scent carried his obsession, his meticulous attention to detail, his relentless psychological hold over me. I had survived his physical threats, endured the chaos he wrought in my home, but this, the letter, was another form of dominance. He had claimed victory in absence, reminding me that the nightmare was far from over. I sank to the floor, letting the envelope rest against my knees, and the house felt impossibly empty. The quiet was deceptive, each shadow a potential echo of him, each flicker of light a reminder of eyes watching. The recorder lay nearby, silent, but it felt useless now. Even the evidence couldn't shield me from the lingering tendrils of fear he had planted. Every thought, every instinct screamed at me to act, to tear the letter apart, to burn it, to silence the threat. Yet part of me was rooted, unable to move, knowing that destroying it wouldn't destroy him. His words had become a tether, connecting me to him in a way that bars and locks could not sever. I realized then that survival was no longer enough. I needed vigilance, foresight, a readiness I hadn't required before. Robert's influence had spread further than I imagined, infecting my perception of safety, trust, and memory itself. The scars he left weren't just emotional, they were strategic, ensuring I never truly let my guard down. The final line of the letter hovered in my mind like a specter. "When I return, you'll remember everything, and then you'll wish you hadn't." I folded the paper slowly, hands shaking, and a horrifying thought struck me. The faint smell of the basement lingered on the envelope. It wasn't just a scent, it was a reminder. He had touched the paper where he had left his mark, where the carved letters still loomed. The past had seeped into the present, and for all my survival, I realized the nightmare was still alive. As I folded the letter, I realized something terrifying. The paper smelled faintly of the basement.